Hi, Herman. Is anyone? Hi, Herman. This is Chris.
Morning. I'm Patricia. I'm the producer. How are you?
Doing well. How are you doing today?
I'm well, thanks.
So just wanted to check in. How's our audio? I'm going to adjust white balance and lighting really quickly, but how's everything looking and sounding just from a connectivity standpoint?
Looks really solid.
Awesome. I'll make a couple adjustments, and then the senator will be seated right around 1 p.m.
That sounds perfect. Thanks so much.
Thank you. What else should we do on our end other than just leave this open?
Just leave it open. I will turn on his camera and microphone when it's time.
Gotcha. And then the total conversation is going to be 10 to 15 minutes. Is that correct?
Yeah, I understand he's got a hard out at 1:20, I believe. Is that correct?
Hard out at 1:20. That's correct. All right.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Patricia?
Herman.
Got it. This is not live, right?
No.
Got it.
But, you know, still just be careful.
No, yep, definitely. Just wanted to make sure it's not being streamed to participants.
So Senator's staff just came through. They did a test. It looks good.
Got it. Yep, I saw that. I wasn't sure that was supposed to be live or not, but cool. That's good to know we're not live.
You know what? It might be useful to have somebody on staff watching as an attendee.
Great.
I'm happy to do that.
Great. Danny, can you do that, please?
Yeah. How do I get to the attendee view?
Stand by.
There's a separate link.
There is. I'll put it, I think I put it in the Slack, but let me look.
Okay.
Yeah, I also gave it to Herman. Herman. Oh no, I gave it to Danny for the board members, the other Danny.
Hmm.
I just put it in Slack, Danny T.
Cool. Got it.
Thank you.
No problem. Do I have to log out of this backend to do that, or just mute this side?
Well, do you have two devices? Ooh, sounds like you do.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So all on the attendee side, I can still see like your video and the participants list and the chat. The only things that are missing are the controls at the top. Is that correct?
Yeah, but you're seeing what we're putting out?
Yeah, but on the attendee side, like I can see your video. Like I
Okay.
can. Is that okay? I guess unless I full screen the presentation. Is there a way that you can full screen the presentation for them? Ah, okay. I just got a request to run in full screen. Got it. Cool. I'm going to leave this and go back to the attendee side.
Okay, can you say, guys see me? Tell me when, Hitman.
We're ready. Please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maria Teresa Kumar, and I am the CEO of Voto Latino. And I want to thank every single one of you for joining us and tuning in to a Power Summit that's slightly different. Now, I understand that normally we all jump on planes and we gather 500 to 600 of us all in one room, mobilizing and getting ready to learn how to engage our community and how to run for office. And I will tell you that you're going to get that same level of expertise, of access from some amazing partners, only it's a little bit different. And I am super grateful. Whoops, I think we're having technical difficulties. 1 second. Hi, Rosario. Patricia, if you want to let me know when I'm ready to go.
Thanks. We're good, MT. Go for it.
Okay, so everyone will start all over, like pretend take 2, because it's a pandemic and why the hell not? I want to thank every single person who is joining us right now from wherever you are. And I want to also just give an opportunity to shout out to everybody who is doing the work to make sure that the country is running. My name is Maria Teresa Kumar. I am the president of Voto Latino, and we are doing the Power Summit a little bit differently this year. Normally, we all gather together in one room, joining us from different parts of the country so that we can learn together, empower each other, and prepare for not only this election, but also encouraging you to run for office and to get the skills that you need to be able to move forward. Expect no less this time, except now we're doing it virtually. We're so pleased and so grateful that you're here with us. We have such an important group of people who have dedicated their time to basically load you up with the knowledge you need to win in November. Before we continue, though, I also want to be able to say that this year at Voto Latino has been such a historic moment because we set out on January 1 to register 500,000 voters. And I have to tell you that as of this morning, I'm so pleased to share that we have registered 398,660 voters. We're almost there. And that is because you guys and you ladies are heeding the call. We recognize que estamos en la lucha and we're registering at record clips. We also know that because of the people that we're registering, a lot of you also want to be volunteers, and that is no small feat. Voto Latino intends to mobilize 3.7 million low propensity voters. Why? Because it starts in our home. We're the ones that are in control of our destiny. We're the ones in control of our democracy. And together we're going to make incredible change. And so please join us for the next 2 hours. Learn a little bit about what's happening at Voto Latino, how you can get involved, but more importantly, what you need to do to empower your community and your families. You have all been making our work possible. We have an incredible group of people lined up. But without further ado, I want to bring in the woman, the powerhouse, the activist, the visionary, my partner in crime, my fellow sister, La Guerrera, the fierce Rosario Dawson. Hey, Rosario, how are you doing? Oh, no, you're on mute.
No. Oh, well, I am well. The powers that be muted me and unmuted me. I appreciate it. Because I am so excited and I can't believe that we are here. 16 years ago, this journey of Voto Latino was, kickstarted with a, text message campaign, videos, and since then it's grown into a fully formed, perpetual motion, and that means year-round machine for voter registration and GOTV work. For the first time ever, Latinxes are the second largest voting bloc in the country this year. That means that there are 32 million of us with the power to directly impact the direction of this country, where it's headed, and how our community is represented and who it is represented by. That means each and every one of us and our voices are critically important. I know every single person on here is already registered to vote, but just in case you are not, please go to votolatino.org and register. You can also text volunteer to 73179 to learn more about how you can get involved with Voto Latino and mobilize voters. You can also download the VoterPal app. Once you're registered, please make sure every single person you know is registered, make sure every single person they know is registered, and make sure they request a mail-in ballot ASAP, or they have a plan to vote early, or that they know that there are 21 states where you can register to vote on the same day as you vote, as the vote. So, just know that we can do this. We can make a difference this election. We can use our power, and there's still a lot of time to get that many more voices out there marching to the polls with us. Now, please join me in welcoming a very, very special guest. I'm so excited. Mr. Senator, no, it's Senator Bernie Sanders.
What?
Senator
What?
Bernie Sanders, we are so thankful for you making the time to be here. Yes, Senator Cory Booker, I love you. But we are very excited that today we have the one and only Bernie Sanders here with our audience. And we're so excited to have you here, Bernie. I can't hear anything. I've lost sound. You can hear me? Audio cut out.
Rosario went to go make some tea while we wait for. Can you hear us?
I hear you again. I don't know what happened, but you're right.
Yeah, awesome. I was like, Rosario went to go make some tea, and we are actively waiting right now for Bernie Sanders. But before Bernie gets here, Rosario, you drove cross country, right?
I did. I just drove cross country in a 29-foot long bus, 13 feet tall. I have Popeye arms from getting past all those trucks. But my dad, has been on this pancreatic cancer journey, and he was cancer-free still, but didn't want to travel by plane. So I did what I had to do. Hi.
Hi, Senator. How are you? Senator, I think you might be on mute. Can you hear us?
We okay now?
We're fantastic. We're much better that you're joining us.
All right. Maria Teresa, thank you so much for the great work you are doing, community for all Americans. And Rosario, thank you so much for your platform and the great action in America to fight for all people. You're doing this amazing work, and it's an honor to meet you today.
We are so grateful that you're taking the time. I think that we can all agree that this is perhaps the most important election of our lifetime. Before we want to dig in, I think that we just want to take just 3 seconds to honor the folks that we have lost of COVID. We know that the Latino community has disproportionately lost individuals. And after this, I think we should just jump in and talk about what's at stake, but just having us just take a moment to recognize those lives lost. And I think now this gives us an opportunity to center our conversation around the stakes. Bernie, one of the things that you have been talking about specifically from the very beginning is the importance of having access to smart healthcare, to modernizing our healthcare system. We know that young Latinos have witnessed the disproportionate brunt of COVID cases in their families. Talk to us what's on the ballot this year.
What's on the ballot, Maria Teresa, is the fact that we are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people. And what that means today is that over 90 million Americans, disproportionately Latino and African American, many poor whites as well, do not have access to a doctor. They get sick, but they cannot afford to go to a doctor. They cannot afford the prescription drugs they need because we pay by far the highest price in the world for the medicine that we require. What is going on in America, and I want everybody to hear this because this is so disgraceful, so outrageous. Some 60,000 people in our country every single year, again, disproportionately Latino and African American, die. They die because they don't get to a doctor when they should. They get an illness and they say, maybe it's going to get better. I can't afford to go to the doctor. By the time they get into the doctor's office, the problem is terminal. So what I am proposing, what you are proposing, what Rosario is proposing, what the majority of the American people understand, healthcare is a human right. It's not a privilege. This is not, and I beg everybody to hear this, this is not a radical idea. Trump and his friends may tell, oh, this is terrible, it's radical. Every other major country on earth guarantees healthcare to all people. I am 50 miles away from Canada. In Canada, anybody goes to the doctor. You don't take out your credit card, you don't take out your wallet, you got all the care you need without spending a nickel out of your own pocket. Prescription drugs, far, far less expensive in Canada. It's true in Great Britain, in France, all over the world. So to answer your question, Maria Teresa, we have got to fight for universal health care. I believe the best way forward is a Medicare for all single payer program. Joe Biden has a different view, but he will expand health care significantly. He will lower the cost of prescription drugs. But our goal must be that anybody in America, and by the way, including the undocumented, who gets sick, are able to walk into a doctor's office when they need.
As you can hear it, you are just a champion of so many. And you've always just been a champion of our social safety net and fighting for economic equity. How can we as a community effectively fight for better healthcare, better economic opportunity, and a better political representation?
Good. Well, Rosario, as you and Maria Teresa have said, the answer is that people at the grassroots level, and there's no community now maybe more important than the Latino community, that we have got to register to vote. We have got to go out to vote. There is a reason why just the other day in Texas, you may have read, that the governor there is limiting the number of drop-in boxes for people to vote. They are trying to make it harder for poor people and working people and young people to vote. If they are trying to make it harder, then understand how important your vote is. They don't want you to vote. And that means you got to go through any and all length to participate in this election. So let me answer Rosario's point. What we need now is a Congress and a White House that speaks to the needs of ordinary people. Half of our people are living paycheck to paycheck. Tens of millions of people are earning starvation wages. How do you live on 10, 12 bucks an hour or less? You can't do it. Biden wants to raise the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. He wants to make it easier for workers to join unions. He wants equal pay for equal work. If you are a woman out there, on average, you're making 75, 80 cents compared to what a man makes for the same work. If you are a minority woman, a Latino woman, An African-American woman, you are making even less than that. Equal pay for equal work. Biden wants to create millions of good-paying jobs, rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure, roads and our bridges and our tunnels, our water systems, our wastewater plants. He wants to create millions of jobs combating climate change. That means retrofitting our homes, making them energy efficient. So the bottom line is that in the richest country on earth, we can and must create a decent standard of living for all people, decent housing. We're going to be talking about why the coronavirus is impacting the Latino community and the African American community more than other communities. And one of the reasons is that people are crowded into homes, and it spreads in that direction. People are forced to go to work even if they're not well, because we're the only major country not to have paid medical and family leave. This election is the most important election, not only in our lifetimes, but in the modern history of America. Maybe since the Great Civil War of 1864. That's what this election is. Please register, please vote, please run for office when you can.
And
Okay,
can you hear me now?
yes.
So you touched on so many things, and you touched on this idea that this is the most consequential election of our lifetime. I believe that this is also an opportunity for a generation to come together. We have not had this moment than the last, in the last 100 years when FDR thought big and audaciously. What opportunities do you see before us by voting and bringing in a new administration? What opportunities as a generation?
Extraordinary. I've been all over the country, and I have talked to God knows how many people. And I look out at the faces of the young people, especially those beautiful faces, the Latino community, African American, young white kids, Native American, Asian American. You know what? They are prepared to think big. They are prepared to fight for health care for all. They are prepared to lead the world in combating climate change. They are prepared to end the kinds of bigotry which we have experienced in this country, coming from the White House right now, the systemic racism for so many years. They are prepared for equal rights for all. So this is an extraordinary opportunity. And as a member of the United States Senate, I'm going to do everything I can to move in this direction, to have the courage to tell the billionaires and the 1%, they cannot have it all. That this government belongs to all of us and not just wealthy campaign contributors. So we have a moment right now to transform this country in so many ways and bring our people together rather than divide us up as Trump and his friends are trying to do.
Bernie, there's just such mass disinformation going on online that is perpetuating division and really making people feel like there is no hope politically, that it doesn't matter which way you vote. They're not seeing the difference. And they're just not seeing that that they have any voice or say or power.
Right.
What would you say in these uncertain times and speak to that disinformation that can really energize people to show up and recognize that they have a chance to make a change?
Rosario, that is a very, very important point. And understand that this disinformation does not happen by accident. What the big money interests do and what the extreme right wing in this country are doing, they understand that in many cases they can't get Latinos or African Americans to vote for them. So what they're saying is, hey, don't vote at all. Everybody is terrible. Stay home. It doesn't matter. And they are targeting the Latino community. They're targeting the African American community specifically. And again, if they are spending millions of dollars lying about Biden or Bernie Sanders or anybody else, understand that they know how important your vote is and they do not want you to vote. So do your best to get objective information. Do not believe everything you see on the internet. Know there are people in this country and abroad, by the way, trying to sow division, who are racists, who are xenophobes, trying to divide us up. So as Rosario said, you're going to say, oh, this is all crap. They're all terrible. I'm not going to vote. That's what they want. Trump and his friends want a low voter turnout, especially within the minority community. If they want a low voter turnout, we want a high voter turnout. So again, organize, educate, get out to vote. This is the most important election.
And I think just to add, Bernie, just to underscore what you're saying is that for the very first time in the 2018 election, Generation X, Y, and Z outvoted older voters. And when people say change doesn't matter, we had the most representative Congress in our nation's history that looked like us, that had the most women, the most diversity, the most LGBTQ, the most Latinas. And then with your colleagues, you had Congress pass 400 pieces of legislation, including the George Floyd Policing Act, including a pathway to DACA, including acknowledging, God forbid, that we have a climate crisis. And that's what their votes did, right? So I keep saying that it was a dress. Yeah, tell me, it was a dress rehearsal. What do we need to do now?
That is what scares the hell out of them.
Yeah.
They look at Alexander, and they look at Rashida, and they look at oh my God. We're having women, we're having people of color, we're having people who are going to fight for the working class. This is terrible. This is awful. Let's do everything that we can to make sure that people don't vote for candidates like that. But the good news is people are voting for candidates like that. And the good news is that young people especially, I think, are standing up and understand how important the struggle is for justice. That's economic justice, everybody, decent wages, decent jobs, social justice, an end to bigotry, racial justice, an end to what we're seeing in the criminal justice system and police department, environmental justice. Yes, climate change is very, very real. And we've got to combat it, and we create good paying jobs through a Green New Deal doing that. So, you're right. There's a lot of change beginning to happen, and we've got to accelerate that change.
We're in the 100-year anniversary of the 19th Amendment, the suffrage movement, and the Haudenosaunee were voting for years before then. And, women of color were not granted the right to vote for decades after, even though they were instrumental in passing that legislation. So, when you speak to we're only just starting to see it, yes, in our last midterms, we were finally seeing Native women represented in Congress after all of these years. So can you just one more time speak to, because there's so many things that are on the ballot, senator seats, all of these different things that can give us that majority, as all of those bills you just spoke to were passed 400 in Congress, they're sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk not being moved forward. This is what is at stake.
Thank you, Rosario. So what is at stake is not only defeating Trump and electing Biden, that's enormously important, but we cannot go forward unless we have a United States Senate prepared to stand up for justice. So we have got to elect a Democratic Senate, and I think we have a reasonably good shot to do it. It's going to be close. It's now 53-47. I think we can get to at least 51 Democrats. Terribly, terribly important. And members of Congress, there are some great candidates running all across this country whose voice we need in the Congress. And there are great district attorney candidates and candidates for prosecutor and state legislature. So what is at stake is, if you are making $12 an hour right now, we're going to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. But we need a Democratic Congress to do that. If you are a young person who is saddled with debt, college debt, $50,000, $100,000, because you chose to get a higher education, we're going to move to make public colleges and universities tuition-free and cancel as much debt as we can. If you are one of the vast majority of the people, unlike Donald Trump, who understands that climate change is real, we have a program to lead the world, because this is a global problem, in combating climate change and creating jobs. If you are somebody who understands that we have got to combat systemic racism and xenophobia, we have strong ideas as to how we can do that. But we need Biden in the White House, we need a Democratic Senate, and we need a Democratic House. So please, stand up right now like you have never done in your life. As Maria Teresa said earlier, or Rosario said also. Get your brothers and your sisters, your uncles, your aunts, your co-workers, your fellow students. Do not let anybody you know sit this one out. It's just too important.
Nope.
Can't hear you.
There you go.
All right.
Whatever you keep pressing, it started and then you turn it off again.
It's not my, hold on.
There you go. You're good.
Okay,
Go.
there we go.
Yeah.
So Senator Bernie Sanders and Rosario, I think that we spoke the truth in the sense that when we say get up and go vote and bring your family together, this will be the very first generation where Latinos will be the second largest voting bloc. It'll be the very first generation where there'll be 10 million more young voters than older voters. And we get to finish the job that we started in 2018. There is a force of nature that wants us to participate. Bernie Sanders mentioned Texas. Texas has 38 electoral votes, and we have 2.5 million young people that we need to get in the game because that changes the rest of the electoral map in a big way. We need all of us. Senator Bernie Sanders, thank you for sharing with us not only the stakes, but also what gives you hope. And I am there with you. What gives me hope is this generation. Rosario, you have been part of this great experiment of Voto Latino, and it's amazing to see that what it went from just this an idea to a powerhouse thanks to your leadership, thanks to your vision. And Bernie, thank you for all that you do for the American people. Thank you for fighting for us.
Well, thank you. We'll keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Maria Teresa, we have come so far.
Who
And we've got so far to go, and I'm so glad that we
far.
have so many more people in the fight with us. You know, I don't want to even just say soldiers in the fight. Like we're in la lucha. We've got
we are in la
we've got each other's arms
lucha.
around each other. It's beautiful.
It absolutely is. Bernie just wanted to hear you say that again.
Yeah, apparently.
Now, folks, I think that we're trying to figure out where the next one is. I appreciate you guys all for joining us live. If that didn't inspire you, we need you to volunteer. Text volunteer to 73179, as Rosario said. Rosario, what else can folks do?
You can download the VoterPal app. You can go to votolatino.org to go and check out where you're registered. If you are registered, if you need to update anything, where your polling station is, any information that you need for your write-in ballot, if you're going to be putting it in early, if you can vote in early, what that looks like. Because as soon as you get your ballot, even if you're mailing it in, you want to fill it out immediately and send it in. You also want to be really specific about how you fill it in. You don't want to be kind of just dotting, you want to totally fill out the polls. You want to do all the different things that are going to make sure that your ballot is not disqualified for anything. So make sure you sign your ballot. We are also right here in this critical juncture. They just pushed it up ahead. We can still be filling out our census forms right now. That equals like what, $10,000 per person in your household for your community. That means that pothole will get fixed. That means that a desk will be there for your child when they're ready to go to school, when we are all going back to school in that same normal way. Like, we do not want to have those monies not be there for us over these next 10 years. So definitely you can go to votolatino.org to fill that out as well.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
The important thing that Rosario just said, that what Bernie Sanders just said, we encourage you also to be a poll worker, but it's all talk until you get the tools that you need to get implemented. So I welcome right now Brianna Carmen, who will be leading our next panel to talk specifically about how do you roll up those sleeves and learn from some of the most talented people on the block of what they're doing at the local level. And then we'll go into breakout sessions. Brianna Carmen, she's our national director of Voto Latino, and so grateful for you. And with that, I disappear, but I think Rosario, do you stay on? I think you stay on.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Look at these
Well,
beautiful
good morning,
faces, you guys.
everyone.
Meet us.
Yeah.
Look how beautiful. I'm just like, I'm taking a screenshot, everyone. Thank you for spending some time with us today, ladies.
Awesome. Well, I'm really excited to be here with some fierce mujeres joining us this morning for, a discussion on how to be an activist. I know we hear that term really thrown around nowadays, and everyone aspires to be one, but what does that necessarily entail, and how do you, go step by step into being an activist in your community? So again, I'm so grateful that you all decided to join us today on a Friday, 31 days out before the election. This is crunch time. I know we are all really anticipating what lies ahead, and I want to reassure you all that you have a direct role in choosing your future. With the voter mobilization that we're doing at Voto Latino and amongst other organizations, we know that now it's more critical than ever. With us today, again, I want to welcome some amazing leaders who are using this digital space to make sure that their communities' voices are heard and that they're creating effective solutions to the issues facing not only them, but our broader Latinx community and the country right now. So please join me in welcoming our fellow panelists. I would love for you all to just do a quick wave so folks know and get a sense of who you are as we do the introductions. So Daphne Frias. Daphne is an amazing and badass disability civil rights activist and the founder of Box the Ballot. So really excited to have you join us today, Daphne. Nubia Willman is the founder of Latinas Uprising, an online community for the modern Latina lawyer. Hey, Nubia. Next, we're joined by Marivette Navarrete. She is the founder and CEO of The Mujerista, a digital media publication and network dedicated to empowering and celebrating the next generation of Latinas making an impact in our culture. Hey, Marivette. And last but not least, excuse me, we have two now, last but not least, Alejandra Cruz. Alejandra is a first-generation Mexican-American senior at the University of Oklahoma, studying women and gender studies and letters with a concentration on constitutional studies. Ooh, very exciting. And has been an instrumental volunteer with Voto Latino. And I know you all had an awesome opportunity to get to know Miss Rosario Dawson, the one and only activist, actor, and really just excited to hear again how you were able to engage on this path, be an activist, tie that into your career, and make it so that way people can get a better sense of what it is to be a Latina in this country and in this moment. So huge round of applause to all of you.
I want to say real quick too that Zoe Saldana really wanted to be on here today with us as well. You know, she started BICE specifically to bring and unite all the voices across the spectrum of Latinos. And, you know, so she just gives her love to everybody here today.
Awesome. Well, Fierce Mujeres, let's go ahead and jump right into it. Just, you know, a question for all of us. What has been one of the biggest challenges or obstacles to engaging with our Latinx community, and how have you overcome them? Don't be shy.
I can go first. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that's the most challenging obstacle that we have faced in engaging the Latinx community is this growing feeling that we've been alienated or neglected from the democratic process. You know, we, as Rosario mentioned, we are the second largest voting bloc in this country, and for young people, specifically communities of color and marginalized groups, I think for a lot of us, we just felt like we've been neglected from this process. And usually we're brought along when it's time to get our votes. And I think this has created this sort of like distrust with the process, with government, and especially when we're seeing that there's this voter suppression and like this lack of upward momentum for our communities. And so that's what I feel like has been a challenging obstacle that we've had to deal with for our community.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, firstly, I want to say gracias por tenerme. Thank you for having me, everyone. I think specifically in my organization working on voting access and absentee ballot access, I think a huge issue has just been getting the Latinx community to understand that like voting isn't a trap. Like we're not trying to collect like your information, and like we're not gonna have the government come, you know, out to like get you. We're trying to make sure that you're represented and that your community is represented, and the best way to do that is by casting your ballot. And I think that they're in multi-generational households, it can also be really difficult because young Latinx voters tend to be more likely to be voting, but their parents or their grandparents or older generations that they tend to live with might not be as engaged or might not be as knowledgeable about the democratic process. So trying to break down those intergenerational barriers can be really, really difficult, but I think those conversations are super important to be fostered. And I think if we can continue fostering more of those conversations, we'd really see huge numbers coming out in regards to the Latinx community.
And I love that you brought this up, Daphne, where, our households and our families were intergenerational. And at times we don't realize that, older individuals, whether it be our parents, our tias, our tios, older primos and primas, they might be looking to us and getting direction from us. So I'm really interested in, hearing from you all. In what ways have you seen young Latinx voters, get motivated and get excited about voting and turning out their entire communities to vote this year?
I can speak a little bit to this. So a lot of the work that I do is on college campuses because I'm senior at the University of Oklahoma. But similar to what Daphne was saying, first generation voters is like a really big thing that we have like realized, and something that our chapter, the Voto Latino chapter at OU, has realized a lot. And just the different work that I've done with civic engagement work on campus is that there's a lot of people who just don't understand how the process works. They don't understand what it means to be registered to vote. They'll ask, like, once I register to vote, do I need to register to vote again for every single election? And so there's a lot of different questions that people have that they don't get answered at home because they don't have anybody at home to be able to answer those questions because they are the first voter of their household. And so I feel like once those answers start to get answers to those questions, you start to see people become more involved and start to ask, okay, what can I do now? What can I do to help get the word out? And that's what we've really seen on our campus, is that once people feel like they know the system and they feel like they understand how to answer questions for other people, they feel more comfortable actually getting involved and feeling empowered to actually go out and do the same thing that they feel like someone else did for them for another future first generation voter as well.
Yeah, I think that speaks to inheritance again. It's another thing that a lot of other communities across the nation have inherited, and that is that idea of being a model voter. It's a part of their identity. They turn 18, they're expecting to register, and they've been going with their parents and their grandparents going to vote, and now those ideologies are being passed down to them, and so they're continuing to perpetuate those ideas. And we're not seeing that. And on top of that, where people are going online to try to get information, they're getting bombarded with a lot of disinformation.
Right.
That is actually giving them everything from the wrong time, the wrong place to vote, information like Daphne, you were talking about, that's saying that if you go and you fill out your census form and you're undocumented, that they're going to be able to have that information to come and deport you, which is incorrect. And that was coming directly from our president, who is trying to put that citizenship question onto the census form. So it wasn't like that came out of nowhere. People really saw it, but they don't know that struck down. And so people are not filling out those forms, and that's going to create disparities within communities for the next 10 years. So can you speak a little bit to what that is, this disinformation? I posted a meme going, go and check where your abuelita, your tia, your prima is actually watching on Facebook, and, look over, it's like, look over your kid's shoulder, look over your parent's shoulder and see where they're getting their information from. People are like, that's so cute. But it's like, no, really,
Right.
What are they looking at? What are they seeing?
It is so important. And, to jump ahead a little bit, I know we're going to have some amazing breakout sessions. One is directly tailored towards disinformation. A lot of these, fake memes that might have a sliver of truth in them, but the rest is false. So I'm really excited that that's coming up. I do have a few last questions for each of you, just as, again, amazing activists. Rosario, I would love to start with you, where, as an actor and as someone who people recognize, how do you feel like being an activist? Was it an easy thing for you to get into? Were there any challenges that you ran into, being a celebrity and, having your job and maybe being afraid of mentioning, this is how I feel about these issues?
I grew up in the Lower East Side of New York. I'm originally from Coney Island, Brooklyn, born to a teenage mom. I didn't know my biological father. And I was raised in an abandoned building that didn't have water, heat, or electricity when we first moved in. And growing up in the 80s and 90s in the Lower East Side during the heroin, crack, AIDS epidemics, housing crisis. I mean, there was police brutality, it was just all the things. It was kind of hard not to be aware of the intersectionality of poverty and all of this stuff that comes up. I think Bernie actually spoke to that, people dying, 60,000 of them a year, just because they don't even go to the hospital because poverty stops them from even trying to check up on themselves. So for me, it was, when I when I started Voto Latino, I was 24, 25. And I remember the big pushback that I got. I mean, we were in the Bush years at that time. And the big pushback mostly I got was actually from the Latino community. Like, why are you even trying to do this? You don't even speak Spanish. Like, you know, like, why do you care about this? And, you know, how is this going to make any difference? And, you know, all these years later, we're seeing all these beautiful things about, you know, we're the wave. Now we're more than the wave. We're the second largest voting bloc. You know, we actually, because of colorism, we separate Black people from Latin people. And so we say our Latin numbers are higher than, you know, Black women numbers, but technically we're intermixed. But those numbers are very, very high. And when you talk about like Black women being the backbone of the Democratic Party, that is still that's a huge possibility within the Latin community, which means all of the different ideas that we want to push forward can happen because we can have a majority in office to make it happen. But we need people to show up and vote to do so. And so for me, I grew up understanding that. My grandmother would say, I may speak with an accent, but I don't think with one. Which makes me cry because it's like, why do we have to assume that someone who has an accent who speaks at least 2 languages is stupid? That's just horrifying. And so for me, it was just, it was in so many different ways. There was no way I couldn't. The very first film I did was about kids not being watched and AIDS being spread and all of that kind of stuff. And so I've always intersected storytelling on screen and off as one of the most critical and crucial things to perpetuate our culture and our ideas and our vision for the future.
And I love that you bring up this whole idea of, you know, representation and intersectionality. And Nubia, I would love to go to you where, you know, I remember there being this huge push where there's not a lot of women in law. And now there aren't a lot of women of color in law. I know the numbers are slowly increasing, but can you talk a little bit, you know, just about Latinas who are fighting for a community as lawyers, you know, holding that space and really pushing forward in one of those areas?
Yes, absolutely. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Hello, everyone. Yes, I'm Nubia Wildman, and I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. As part of Latinas Uprising, what we do is provide practical information for folks who want to go to law school. Latinas make about 2%, and that's a good number, 2% of all attorneys in the United States. And that is a dismally low number because lawyers touch everything that we have. Anything that impacts your quality of life, a lawyer's hand has touched it in some way. And so the fact that we aren't at the table means that other folks are making decisions for us without our perspective, without having an understanding of how it's going to impact our community. And so the fact that the numbers are so low are really twofold, right? It's because we are not as well resourced as a community. We're not giving the same access to opportunities. And so it really limits being able to access higher education, which can be a very lonely journey for a lot of first generation students, very difficult, very costly journey. And then the legal profession, let's not even talk about the legal system, which is very complex and has a lot of issues in terms of justice. But the legal profession in and of itself is very exclusive. It's very small c conservative, and really is entrenched in the fact that it wants to stay the same and wants to have the same types of people. And so when you are someone like me, who's first generation, who grew up in poverty, who experienced intergenerational violence, I myself am an immigrant, all of those things are really impacted and create barriers upon barriers, even though there is a benefit to having those experiences. And what I see is a lot of the young women who read the blog and who participate in the community, they had some kind of situation in their life that became a catalyst. So they decided, this happened to me, this horrible experience, whether it was my parents were deported, I saw how badly my mom was treated during a child custody dispute, all these types of things that really then become the motivation for them to go to law school, which is a very difficult process, and still go through all those bumps and bruises, which we all experience going through that, to then say, I'm going to do this because I don't want anyone else to experience what I had to, and I'm going to make sure that I'm inside the system and I'm going to change it for the better. And I see so many Latinas really more interested in the law and really understanding how a law degree comes with power, and how if they're at the table, they can really make that difference for their communities and their own families. And it's a very noble thing. So it's always very exciting to talk about and empowering young women to consider law school.
Well, it's so incredible what you do, Nubia. And, you know, as we talk about this, I think a few themes that arise is, you know, changing our internal culture as well as changing our external culture. And Maribeth, I know this is something that you're dedicated to using your online platform. Can you talk just a little bit about, having these cultural shifts online and having these discussions and making people feel like it's okay to see a badass Latina as a lawyer. It's okay to see someone who looks like me advocating for this.
Yeah, so when I started the Mujerista in 2018, it was as a result of the 2016 presidential elections. I was looking for a space that talked about my experiences as a first generation Nicaraguan American growing up in this country and what my family had gone through, because the political rhetoric at the time was just so negative and stereotypical. I wanted to find a space that talks about how powerful Latinas were, and I couldn't find it. And that's how the idea came about. And for the last 2 years, we've really worked hard on highlighting incredible Latinas that are making a difference in our culture, creating impact, and showing that when there is representative storytelling, it makes a difference in people's lives and communities, because we learn to identify with that representation, and we can see what can be possible for ourselves. And so I think that's the big cultural shift that we're seeing, is that so many of us are creating space for ourselves, because we don't see it, and we're deciding, what, it might not be out there, but that doesn't mean I can't take the risk and do it myself. And so I think there's a lot of that. We're seeing a lot of young Latinx folks really do that and take that initiative, and also support and empower one another, which has been so, I think, inspiring for me. Seeing these conversations take place online, where we are uplifting, we are sharing really good content, important content, connecting with one another, and that gives me so much hope for the future for us women.
And I would love to next segue over to Daphne, just to really expand upon that representation. I think you occupy such an amazing space where we're engaging with the Latinx community, we're connecting with youth, and also talking about making spaces more accessible to everyone. Can you share a little bit about what you do on a day-to-day basis in your initiative, Daphne?
Yeah, well, I like to dip my toes into a lot of different buckets. Staying busy is where I stay comfortable. So, but really, what I'm doing up until the election is really a twofold initiative. Sort of educating the Latinx community about public health and what public health is, and how voting is inherently a public health issue. I'm currently an MD and PhD student at Johns Hopkins, getting my both degrees virtually, awesome. Which is difficult, but I'm still grateful. And like Nubia was saying, breaking down those barriers of higher education for the Latinx community is so incredibly important, and I'm honored to be able to be in that fight. And with my background in public health, I started Box the Ballot, which is an absentee ballot collection initiative for young voters across the country. I created this in the 2018 midterms after voting for the first time in 2016 via absentee ballot and not understanding the process whatsoever. I actually almost missed the deadline to turn in my ballot because I didn't understand how to do it, when it needed to be sent in. I didn't know anything about it at all, but I knew that I wanted to vote, and I didn't think it should be so difficult to be able to do that from away from your house. And I thought about if I struggled voting, how many other young people weren't voting just because they didn't understand the process. 4 million young people turn 18 every single year. That's 4 million new eligible voters that can help to change any election. Currently, young people vote 1 in 4. If we were able to vote 1 in 3, we'd be able to flip any election we wanted to. And out of those 4 million eligible voters each year, Latinos make up about 46% of those who turn 18 every year. So we have a huge responsibility to turn out for our community. So obviously we're living in really strange times. So I needed to figure out ways that we can still make sure that people were getting their ballots to where they needed to be. So I worked with my team of all amazing young women to create a Dropbox program across the country. And we deliver Dropboxes to people's homes. They collect their ballots, and we also created an innovative tracking system with QR codes that you scan the ballots. They let us know when they've been received by our Dropbox captains, and they also let us know when they've been dropped in the mail. So we're not only getting people to vote, but we're also revolutionizing the voting process in general and creating more transparency. And as of this morning, we have delivered 1,300 drop boxes all across the country and in Puerto Rico. So we're getting thousands and thousands of ballots where they need to be. And I think something that's so amazing, two statistics I want to share is that young people who aren't eligible to vote due to disenfranchisement, due to age, due to immigration status, they often feel like they're left out of the democratic process for very valid reasons. But because our Dropbox system isn't about necessarily casting a vote, it's about collecting ballots, they can participate in this process. So we've had minors and disenfranchised individuals and undocumented individuals sign up for our Dropbox programs, and young people have been able to take part in the electoral process way earlier than they expected to, and I think this has been something so amazing. A story that I wanted to share with you all is a young girl about 2 days ago. She just turned 18. Her mom and dad just became citizens after immigrating from Ecuador, and it was their first time voting. They didn't feel safe voting in person due to the pandemic, but she signed up to be our Dropbox captain, and she sent me the cutest video of her and her parents dropping their Dropboxes in their Dropbox, dropping their ballots in their Dropbox for the first time, and her parents were so emotional, and it really just sort of brought back the message that our community is powerful, and if we come together with knowledge and with hope and with conviction, we can get anything done. Anything is possible. And I'm so proud of our community for turning out. They account for about 30% of our Dropbox applications. So the Latinx community is here. We are powerful, and we're getting out that vote. And I'm so honored to be part of that movement.
This is amazing. And Daphne, I couldn't help but be shocked when you're like, oh, I almost missed it. And that happens to people all over the country where some of these rules and regulations, they are so tricky and there's really not any rhyme or reason to them. So I'm glad that you're bringing access to people all over the country. It's incredible. And Alejandra, we're about to move into our breakout sessions. But my last question for you, just, in a sentence, what piece of advice would you give to young activists, much like yourself right now?
Yeah, so the piece of advice that I would give for sure is to lean on your community and to lean on the people around you. This isn't work that you can do by yourself. And it can become very tiresome, and at times it can feel like you feel really defeated, but you haven't seen the results that you want to see as quickly as you want to see them. And so just remember to lean on the people around you. Taking care of yourself at the end of the day is going to be the most important thing. I mean, that was something hard that I had to learn, that if I wasn't doing well, the work that I was doing wasn't gonna show that. And so always take care of yourself, and remember that your mental health is really important. Remember to eat and to sleep. College students are so bad at this. We should not be bragging about how much sleep we're getting at night. Like, oh, I got 4 hours. That is not okay. You should be getting enough sleep at night. I know that it's not always possible, but always prioritize your mental health and your well-being, because at the end of the day, that's going to allow you to be a better activist. That's going to allow you to be in the spaces that you want to be, in a better mindset, so that you feel prepared and that you feel comfortable being in those spaces, as opposed to running on 3 hours of sleep and forgetting to eat all the time. That is not okay. So that's my little rant for you all, to please take care of yourselves. It's so important within our community.
Hold on, can I just say, you just talked about sleeping, and that is what we've just taken on really strongly. Ladies, these amazing young activists who have just been speaking with us. We're about to go into our breakout session, but sleeping has been the new thing that we've gone. I can tell you during his presidential election, he was not getting very much sleep, but we've now decided that sleeping when we're dead is not a good idea.
No.
Because it'll put us early into the grave if we don't get enough sleep.
Sleep is a weapon. Sleep is a weapon.
Yes, please take care of yourselves. I know, being an activist and working in the space of advocacy, it can be really hard. There are really traumatic and challenging things that we deal with. And I would love to, recommend sleep and self-care as one way that you can make sure that you're in this fight, in la lucha, for the long term. I'm really excited to share that we are going to be transitioning to breakout sessions. So thank you again to our amazing Fierce Mujeres for joining us today and dropping some knowledge. As far as these breakout sessions, you'll all be moved into one of them. They're going to be randomly assigned. It's just the world of technology that we live in today. Each one is amazing, and they're going to be presented by some wonderful partners. So we'll have a media training hosted by GLAD, ready to make your voice heard. Let's hear those stories and share them with our communities. The second one is by our friends at March for Our Lives, really building the people's house, race and implicit bias within organizing, how to make sure that this movement is for everyone and that we are using our voice to ensure that there are seats at these tables. The third movement is one of my personal favorites, and I will be in that room as well. Emily's List, they are hosting How to Run for Office. Our fourth panel is going to be the Disinformation Defense League, teaching us how to combat disinformation targeting our Latinx community, much like Rosario mentioned earlier. And the last is Power the Polls. We know that, traditionally a lot of older, retired folks, grandparents, tios, tias, they would be poll workers. They had some free time. Given the world of coronavirus, that is really hard. And they are, in one of those areas where they need to make sure that their health is being prioritized, and, maybe socializing with a lot of people just doesn't make sense right now. So let's step up. We're young people. We are healthy. If you have the opportunity to be a poll worker or share it with others, I highly recommend. And our friends are going to be teaching you step by step how to be a poll workers and about the need during this election. So really excited, and see you all in a breakout room.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. And panelists, feel free to join a breakout.